طيب بسم الله الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه ما يحب ربنا عز وجل ويرضاه واشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم. Amma ba'd. Hopefully everyone's Eid was blessed, joyous, inshallah, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your deeds of worship. Ameen. Your fasting, your prayers, your slaughtering, or whatever you did of good during those days leading up to the Eid, the day of the Eid, and the 3 days of Tashriq afterwards, and inshallah up to this day and bi'idhnillah in the future. In our first session, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, if my memory serves me correctly, we began an introduction speaking about the objectives of the course. What do we want to learn from this course? Why have we selected this topic, which perhaps many of you, brothers and sisters, may find a little odd or a little weird or a little untraditional, unorthodox. What is this book? Who is the author? If we're going to talk about hadiths, why not speak about Bukhari and Muslim? So on and so forth. Perhaps some of you guys may have had some of these questions that you wanted to ask yourself. So during that first session, we spoke about this briefly. Some of the objectives of the course and some of the benefits, hopefully, that we'll get from studying from this book and the importance of this topic, the topic of al-Eman. So our time is very limited, and me as a person, I naturally like to speak and expound on a lot of things and give you much more, but due to the nature of the schedule and the nature of the time, some brothers have to leave early, some sisters can't come, etc. We'll try to keep it as summarized as possible bi'idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. So before we actually get into the chapter of al-Eman, the actual chapter of faith, quote unquote, there are a few introductions that we have to take. The first being something about the author in brief. Secondly is something regarding hadith, sunnah, and the books of hadith and sunnah in brief. And thirdly, we have to take something about al-Eman in brief. Because you understanding those hadiths, benefiting from them, implementing them, passing them on to others, those hadiths have to be understood in the light of the general understanding or the general concept of Iman. And what is the proper way of understanding Iman, and what is the proper way of understanding al-Iman. So therefore, in the first volume of this English translation, it has something about the author, about Imam at-Tirmidhi, rahimahullah. So perhaps if we can have a volunteer from one of the brothers or one of the sisters to read this for us, so we can move on, inshallah. Hopefully we have a volunteer. Anybody going to read for us? Fadl Ahmed. It says here about the author. In other words, brothers and sisters, before you start studying a book or course or learning from someone, it is essential that you know who the person is. And it's not just for a negative reason. I don't know who this guy is, who's teaching me, what book I'm reading, I don't know what he's on, or no, but also from a positive standpoint, that when you know the author, you can give him more respect. You can make more dua for him. And if we're going to benefit and learn from this book, it's only fair and it's only the right of the author is that we know something about him and what he went through and who he was, etc. Everybody clear on this? And this is with any book that you're studying in Islam, rather outside of Islam. When you read about a great man in history, in the encyclopedia or Wikipedia, the first thing they do, they give you a summary of his what? Or of her life. First thing. Who was he? Where was he from? The basics of that person. Everybody clear on this? Khair, inshallah. So therefore, anything which is good and which is virtuous that the non-Muslims do, the Muslims deserve it or own it even more. We have more right to the fada'il, to things which are good and positive. And this is very important for us to understand. If the non-Muslims practice hygiene and cleanliness and order and organization, then the Muslims deserve it even more than they do. Not only did we come before them in that, even though many Muslims today are lacking and behind, but the original practice of it was done by the Muslims. And if the non-Muslims are clean, if they're on time, if they have hygiene, if they have courtesy, then we as Muslims, we should do it even more. And we have even a greater right to it than they do. Everybody clear on this? So we said that the non-Muslims, I'm sure you guys in college can tell me better, when you read about someone, a book that you're studying, this famous lawyer, this judge, etc., you read about the person's what? About their life first. Everybody clear on this? So we have to do this what? Even more. Khayr, inshallah. So we have any volunteers? Ahmed, follow.
He is Abu Isa ibn Salman ibn Musa ibn
Dahak. Ad-Dahak.
As-Sulami
As-Sulami.
As-Sulami Ad-Darir Al-Bughi at-Tirmidhi. He is called As-Sulami
As-Sulami.
As-Sulami due to his ancestors' allegiance to the tribe of Sulaim, a well-known branch of the families of Qais ibn Ghilan.
Yani in Islam, to keep things brief, we just don't mention the first name and last name. But we mention first name, last name, we mention the name of the father, the name of the grandfather, a person's trade and profession, and also the person's, the tribe or the clan in which they come from. And it's very important. Genealogy in Islam is very essential for several reasons and for several wisdoms. Khayr, inshallah. So therefore, his name is Abu Isa. In other words, that is his kunya, the father of Isa. That's not his actual name. That's his what? His kunya. And in Islam, the sunnah is for men and women to have kunyas. Your name should be, if you have a son named Ahmed, Abu Ahmed. Ahmed. And the kunya, as we spoke about this a couple of days ago, is a means of respect, is a means of affection, and it's a means of honor, and it's also a means of distinction. Because it's not practiced by people that are not Muslims, something specific to us. Abu Abdullah, Abu Abdurrahman, Fulan, Khadija. This is a very, very important forgotten practice of many Muslims, unfortunately. So his name is Abu Isa, the son of Sawra, the son of Musa, to the end of his lineage. Ad-Darir, in other words, he was blind. Imam at-Tirmidhi, he went blind. And some of the ulama say that he went blind from crying from the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and others say he was born blind. Khayran, inshallah. He says, as for at-Tirmidhi, that's a famous thing that you're going to know him by. It is an inscription to a large city, Tirmidh, on the northern banks of the Amu Dara River in Tajikistan. His grandfather was from Maru in Turkmenistan, but he immigrated to Tirmidh where Imam at-Tirmidhi was born. Yani, the current day, Tajikistan is where Tirmidhi was originally from. This area, this region, Khayran, inshallah. Continue.
His birth, studies, and travels. Scholars differ over which year he was born in. The dates vary between 200 and 209. While he was young, he began learning his own city and later traveled to learn from the scholars of various lands. At-Tirmidhi said he journeyed through the land and heard from many personalities from Khurasan, and Iraq, and Hijaz, and other places. His teachers at Tirmidhi heard from many of the most eminent people of knowledge of his time. Some of those whom al-Bukhari heard from, as well as the other famous compilers. He met and heard narrations from Muslim and Abu Dawood, and he stayed with al-Bukhari, learning a wealth of knowledge and narrations from him. Thus, Al-Allama Abu al-Aziz
Dihlawi
said, surely at-Tirmidhi was Bukhari's successor.
In other words, it's important to us to understand where was he from and who he studied with, who he learned from. And if there was no virtue of this Imam, and to show you how much knowledge he had, and consequently what type of benefit you're going to get from his book, is to look at his teacher. He was a student of Imam al-Bukhari. Rather, he was one of the best, if not the best, the prized pupil of Imam al-Bukhari, which many people don't know. So whenever Muslims talk about Bukhari, Sahih al-Bukhari, the book of Bukhari, it shouldn't be too far behind. The people should speak about who? At-Tirmidhi, and his book and his works. Everybody clear on this? And there lies no doubt a hidden gem among many Muslims, unfortunately. Khayran, inshallah. The author or the translator here, he forgot to mention, this is very weird, very strange, unfortunately. He didn't even mention his first name. He is Abu Isa bin Sawra. Muhammad ibn Isa. Abu Isa, Muhammad ibn Isa. So this goes to show that everything you read is not always the most thorough piece of information. Khayran, but we're not here to find fault, we're benefiting from it. Khayran, his books. In his Sunan, Sadr Ahmed. In his Sunan, and we're going to clarify later on that the proper terminology or word for his book is not Sunan, but it's Jami. And we're going to explain what that means, inshallah. We'll just read a little quicker, Ahmed.
In his Sunan, at-Tirmidhi mentioned much of what he learned from al-Bukhari. concerning narrators and benefits from the narration.
Very important, brothers and sisters. If you want more about Bukhari and to learn from what he said, you're not going to find all of it in Sahih Bukhari, even in English. So you can take a lot of Bukhari's opinions, his views, his school of thought on hadith and fiqh in the book of Tirmidhi. It's very well known. Everything that you can get from the master, you take from the apprentice. And he only wrote a few books, the teacher, but his students, they took all of his wealth, all of his knowledge, and they wrote it down and they recorded it. Very important. Khair, inshallah, his books.
His books, he authored many books, the most famous of which are the following.
The status of an imam is often determined by what books he left behind. The status of a great painter is often determined by what? The paintings, the classical masterpiece that he has in the museums. A famous musician, what music did he compose? What famous symphony did he put together? This, what you leave behind, is your mark on the world. So it's very important for us to understand this. It says he authored many books, the most famous of which are the following. Number one,
Jami.
Al-Jami. Here we see more confusion by the translator, where he calls it Jami, and earlier he called it what? Sunan. Khair, moving on.
And it is this book more commonly known as Sunan at-Tirmidhi.
Khair. Number two,
Al-Shamil.
Al-Shama'il.
Al-Shama'il. Al-Nubuwiyya.
Al-Nabawiyya. It's supposed to be an A, not a U.
Al-Nabawiyya. Wal-Khasa.
Wal-Khasa'il.
Khasa'il. Al-Mustafawiyya.
Al-Mustafawiyya.
Al-Mustafawiyya. More commonly known as Shama'il at-Tirmidhi.
In other words, this book here, brothers and sisters, is a book that he compiled about the Prophet ﷺ's character and appearance, his physical and moral character and traits. It's a very important book that he wrote about how the Prophet looked, how he walked, how he talked, how he ate, how he slept. Very, very important for the Muslim to read these types of books. If we say that we love Muhammad, how much do we know about the Prophet ﷺ? And there lies no doubt, not to go off the topic too much, but from the things that prove that Islam is the truth, is the amount of detail that we have about our Prophet. And if you ask people, and this doesn't say that we don't believe in Jesus, because we do believe him, and we do accept him, and we love him as a prophet of Allah, not a son of Allah. But if you ask someone who is a Christian or Catholic, says, what can you tell me about Jesus? Can you determine what he looked like? Is there consensus among people who call themselves Christians? What was he fair skinned, or did he have brown skin or dark skin? What does his hair look like? How tall was he? What did he eat? What did he drink? How did he sleep? What was the name of his horses and his everything? We have detail about the Prophet ﷺ, which proves that Islam is the truth, and that the sheer richness of the information is a big strong point for Muslims. And none of these things would be possible if it wasn't for Hadith and the books of Hadith. So Hadith and Islamic theology go hand in hand. Everybody clear on this? Very important. Okay, inshallah. Number three, Al-Ilal.
Al-Ilal al-Saghir, which is often printed at the end of Sunan at-Tirmidhi.
This is a book pertaining to the technical defective narrations of Hadith. His death. And all three of these books are in print, wide circulation, and they are at the top of the list of the genre. His death.
At-Tirmidhi died in Tirmiz, in the village of Bukh, according to Sam'ani, on the eve of Monday, the 13th night of Rajab, in the year 279. May Allah have mercy upon him.
In other words, this is a brief piece of information on his life. Then we have about his book. Perhaps we'll skip it. We really don't have time to get into this right now, but we mentioned a brief from the benefits of at-Tirmidhi, which is going to become clear, is that he does what? He speaks about the hadith, what it means, so on and so forth. Now let's move on to this. I will read this so we can get a little quicker. First point is sunnah, meaning. It says the word sunnah literally means a way or laid down practice. As for according to the Islamic legislature, then it depends on what field of expertise the term is being depicted in. It has a specific meaning according to the scholars of Hadith. Similarly, according to the scholars of Aqidah, also according to the jurists of Islam, it has a special intended meaning when compared to bid'ah, etc. In brief, the word sunnah does not have one meaning. It has several different meanings. And we said these meanings depend on who's using the word. We have a scholar who specializes in fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, halal and haram. When he says sunnah, he means something specific. When a scholar of hadith says this is sunnah, he means something what? Specific. When we talk about creed, Iman, what you believe in, and we will mention the word sunnah, sharh sunnah, it has a what? A specific meaning. From the most widespread mistakes that we have among Muslims today is they mix between these terms. And they jumble between these terms. They say that things that are obligatory, they say, oh, it's just sunnah, brother. And that's wrong. This scholar said that this act is obligatory and it's also sunnah. This scholar said that this wearing the beard, for an example of men, is sunnah. Or wearing hijab is sunnah. What does that word mean? That it's only recommended? That you have an option not to do it? Or did he intend something else? It depends on what? As we said, on what field of expertise the word is being what? Used. Very clear. We don't have too much time to go down that path too much, but it's very, very important. Number 2, sunnah. Compilation process, how? During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the sunnah was preserved by memory and, contrary to common belief, actual documentation. In other words, the Sahaba, not only did they memorize what the Prophet said, what he did, what he told them to do, by heart, but there was also pieces of information, hadiths that were written down. They were actually on paper during the life of Muhammad. In contrast to common belief, to the Orientalists and those who learned from the Orientalists, for those who say that the Prophet's sunnah, his hadith, were not recorded except for 200 years afterwards. That is a total fallacy. That is an inaccurate statement. Not just from Muslims, but the actual documentation. That's wrong. All of the hadiths were not written down during his life, but some of them were. And just because something is written on paper, does it mean that it's correct? Is it valid? If somebody tells a lie and puts it on paper, does that mean it's true? And just because something isn't on paper, does it mean that it's false? Doesn't mean that. So these people, the Orientalists, those who came from Western countries and went to the lands of the East and studied about what the Muslims did, and the Buddhists and Hindus, specifically with the Muslim culture, the Arabic language, the Quran, and specifically Hadith, they came with these bogus ideas and principles. And they forced their way and their culture upon the way of the people of the East. And that's wrong. People in the East, for example, let's say they don't wear their shoes inside of the house, or they sit on the floor, or the cups out of which they drink, they don't have handles on them. So I come from Europe, I come from Hungary or France or Germany or Portugal, and I come and I says, well, if you don't have a handle on your cup, then you're a savage. If you walk barefooted, then you don't have civilization, you don't have culture. If your religion is not written down and put on paper, then it's fabricated. It's false. Why? Because in our country, everything about our religion is on paper. That doesn't mean nothing scientifically. Rather, that shows you that you're weak and feeble, that you can't memorize and you depend upon paper, which can be fabricated, which can be forged, which can be lost, and can be destroyed. So therefore, this is very important for the Muslim to understand. Number 2, the companions began this process by following, imitating, and observing the acts of the Prophet ﷺ. This is how the Sunnah was conserved. This is how it was preserved and compiled. Through memorization and through mimicking the Prophet ﷺ. In other words, there are things that the Prophet ﷺ did, and they observed him doing, and they passed on those actions to the Muslims who came later on. If it wasn't on a piece of paper, even if it wasn't with a statement, that is also a means of what? The Sunnah being preserved and spread. Everybody clear on this? Point number 3 or C. They also had many scrolls and memorandums that contained several hadiths from the Prophet ﷺ, such as the hadith speaking about zakah, things that the Prophet had ordered to be written down during his lifetime. Moving on. Khair, inshallah. Let's see. During the time of the successors, at-Tabi'un, more recording of those hadiths were widespread and passed down by oral tradition took place. During the era of the junior Tabi'in, did this process undergo serious change, and many books were actually compiled during this era. In other words, brothers and sisters, and I should have started the slideshow. Sorry. Aywa. Tayyib. The Sahaba passed it on to the Muslims who came after them. And we said that we're going to talk about Islamic history in this class. So who were the first generations of Muslims? They were called the Sahaba, companions. The second generation of Muslims, those who came and studied with them are called Tabi'un or Tabi'iyun. They are the first early generations of the Muslims. The Sahaba took it from the Prophet, whether it was his noble mouth, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his hands, his actions. The companions learned it. They wrote some of it down. Some of it was memorized by heart, and they passed it on to the Tabi'un. The Tabi'un who are kibar, major Tabi'in, who met 10 of the Sahaba, or 20 of the Sahaba, or 30 of the Sahaba, who met 10 companions who were promised paradise. The next generation is that what we call the junior Tabi'un. Those who only met 1 or 2 of the companions. Those who only saw one of the companions here or there, heard 1 or 2 things from it, and that was it. They're not kibar, they're of a lower level. The major process of recording, of writing down, of putting into books took place during what time period? The junior Tabi'in. The junior Tabi'in, and not the major Tabi'in. Khayr, inshallah. Forgive me for rushing, brothers and sisters. I would love to sit and explain this one point in an hour, but we have to do what we have to do, inshallah. Next point is sunnah authority. From the aspect of legal authority and validity, the sunnah is equal with the glorious Quran. In other words, there is no difference when it comes to rules and regulations between Quran and sunnah. There is difference between the Quran and the sunnah with regards to reciting it, being upon wudu, the level, how it was passed down, its virtue, But when it comes to rules, Allah tells you to do something, the Prophet tells you to do something, they are what? Equal. If there's a hadith that gives you a ruling that's not mentioned in the Quran, we say what? It's just the same. And not as some Muslims say, if it's not in the Quran, we don't take it. We can't just take a hadith that's not in the Quran. No, that's false. And the whole purpose of the Prophet ﷺ being sent was to be what? Obeyed. This is the purpose of him being a messenger, is to be obeyed. Everybody clear on this? So therefore, from the concept of legislation and of validity, the sunnah is equal with the what? The glorious Quran. Very important point. Allah the Exalted never commands us to obey Him except that He orders us to obey His messenger as well. There's no verse in the Quran that states, وَأَطِيعُ اللَّهِ, obey Allah, and that's it. You're not going to find it in the Quran. Every single place Allah says obey, the word obey, His messenger is mentioned directly after His name, subhanahu wa ta'ala, which shows us the importance and the authority of the Prophet's sunnah. Allah has warned us against opposing the command of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَلْيَحْذَرِ الَّذِينَ يُخَالِفُونَ عَنْ أَمْرِهِ أَنْ تُصِيبَهُمْ فِتْنَةٌ أَوْ يُصِيبَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Allah says, and let those beware who go against His command, lest a fitna befall them, or a painful torment, or a painful punishment. There is no difference with regards to the authority of the sunnah between matters of belief and creed, worship and devotion, moral character and behavior, and politics and government. In other words, there's some Muslims who say, well, I'll accept how the Prophet prayed, how he gave zakat, how he fasted, but my social life, my economic life, how I live, how I make a living, who I can and cannot marry, can I have a girlfriend or a boyfriend? No, that's outside of Islam. But the Prophet prayed because Allah says establish the prayer, but it's not how to establish the prayer. The specific way of the prayer is not mentioned where? It's not mentioned in the Quran. So some Muslims, they will say, we take how the Prophet prayed, how he made salat. That's fine. But I can't sleep like this. I can't lean on my left hand side. I have to dress like this. I can't use this. I can't get money like this. I'm like, no. That the Prophet has nothing to do with these things. It's 2015. We have modern technology. We have medicine. We have the internet. The Prophet doesn't know about these things. I can do whatever I want to do. When it comes to these things, there's no difference. And if you reject this, then you have rejected that. Everybody clear on this? Very crucial point, especially in these colleges. Many people, they think that this is okay. Islam is just 5 pillars and then that's it. No. Islam has a ruling from how you pray to how you drink. You see that? What is in that cup? And what hand did you use? What did you say before you took that drink? There's a hadith about that. And if you read a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ says, don't drink coffee, don't drink tea, don't drink with your right hand, then you cannot say, well, I'm a Muslim, I know I pray like the Prophet, but I can drink whatever I want to because it didn't exist. La. There's no difference, brothers and sisters. Very crucial point. Moving on. Or also politics and government. What is a major calamity in the Muslim lands today, in the Middle East or other Far Eastern countries, in which people, they think that they can rule with other than the Prophet's ruling. We can have this system of government. It's okay. We're still Muslims. We still pray. We still fast Ramadan. But our government is based off of man-made laws. That's incorrect. And that is something that does not please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Moving on. Hadith meaning. The word hadith, when used as a noun, means a story, narrative, report, and or discourse. When we use it as a noun, it means what? A story. A hadith means what? A story. هَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ الْغَاشِيَةِ. Allah says, has the story of the overwhelming event not come to you? Has the story of my guest Ibrahim not come to you? Hadith linguistically means a what? A discourse. فَبِأَيِّ حَدِيثٍ. Allah says, what hadith will they believe in it? After the Quran. So that's what the word linguistically means. When used as a synonym, it means something new. You say kitab one hadith, qalam one hadith, yani jadid, something that is new, that's not old. As for its technical meaning in the science of tradition, anything that is attributed to the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whether it be a statement, action, silent approval, description and quality, physical or moral, and or seerah. We said anything that is attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, regardless whether it's authentic or whether it's weak, true or false. But if we say the Prophet said, the Prophet did, the Prophet looked like this, the Prophet allowed the companions to do this and do that, we call that thing a what? What do we call it? Hadith. It could be a total lie, but it is attributed to Muhammad, then we call it a what? Hadith. The moment we say Abu Bakr said, Umar said, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, he did, it is not necessarily called a hadith. Everybody clear on this? This is what the word technically means according to the discipline of hadith. We can just save the questions towards the end, inshallah. Now, we said whether it is a statement, action, a silent approval, something that the Prophet ﷺ allowed the companions to do. Description, he looked like this, or quality. He was humble, he was shy, he was brave, he was generous. And or seerah. The battle of Uhud, the battle of Badr, the treaties of Hudaybiyah. These things are all called what? I need you guys to answer. Everybody. And they call what? Hadith. Hadith. Gotta have an interactive class, inshallah. I'm not going to bore you and just talk to you. I'm going to call on you, inshallah. Khair, inshallah. It says hadith science. What is it? Hadith science is a noble discipline, and one, if not, of the most important of the Islamic arts. Hadith science consists of rules. It's a typo here. The editor didn't catch. And fundamental principles that are used to determine the conditions of narrations and narrators with regards to acceptance or rejection. In other words, the science of hadith is not something that's spiritual. It's not something that's mystical. It's not something that you have a taste for. It is a science that's based off of rules, principles, fundamental principles that give us the ability to determine what is acceptable and what has to be rejected with regards to reports, with regards to reporters. Everybody clear on this? Like the news. Who determines what reaches the news? Who determines what goes into a newspaper? What reporter brought the story? Do we know him? What is his or her integrity? How mentally sharp are they? Were you there? Did we have it on tape? The witness, the interview, etc. Who's the editor? Everybody clear on this? No, this story doesn't make no sense. That's not right. We can't put that in the newspaper. That's a lie. That's inaccurate. Everybody clear on this? The science of hadith determines what story is true and what story is what? False. And it's a set of principles. It's a discipline. It's an art. It's a field of study. There are many branches and subgenres of hadith science, such as al-mustalah, hadith terminology. What does the word sahih mean? Or da'if? Or hasan? What do these terms mean? Ilm rijal, knowledge of men, meaning biographical evaluation. This woman, she narrated hadith from Aisha, Amra bint Abdurrahman. Who was she? Where was she born? Was she trustworthy? Did she have a good memory? How many years did she study with Aisha? Muhammad ibn Sirin. These people, he's a tabi'i, he's a sahabi. Men and women. We evaluate their what? Biographies, their life stories, to determine who we can and cannot take narrations from. Gharib al-hadith, vocabulary of hadith, etc. In other words, brothers and sisters, Allah has given the Muslims the ability to accurately and scientifically pinpoint what the Prophet said and what he didn't say. What the Prophet did and what he didn't do. What the Prophet looked like and that which he did not, or how he did not look. And there is no other religion or faith or event in the history of humanity that they can say the same for as the Muslims. There's no doubt about this. And for this reason, the kuffar themselves, the Orientalists themselves, they have said, فَلْيَفْرَحَ الْمُسْلِمُونَ بِعِلْمِ حَدِيثِهِمْ. They said, let the Muslims take pride and let them rejoice in this great science. And they weren't Muslims, but they understood the amazing feat years before it was anything a computer or Dewey Decimal System, when paper was scarce, when ink was scarce, when there was no train, no plane, you had to travel. The Muslims had a detailed science that Allah had given them. And there's no other person that can say that. Not a Jew, not a Christian, not a Hindu, not a Buddhist. No one can say that they have an accurate set of principles that allows them to determine what they follow and who they follow and what they believe in. Khairan, inshallah. And that's a whole entire lecture in itself. Hadith science. What is sahih? The term sahih literally means healthy, correct, and sound. According to the science of hadith, it is the narration that fulfills the following conditions. Number one, it must have a continuous chain. Number two, its narrators must possess religious piety and equity. Number three, they must also possess retentive memories. Number four, there must not be any hidden defects or glitch in its chain or text. These are the conditions for a story to be accepted. In other words, if somebody told me that a lady passed out in the classroom on the first floor, the first thing that I'm going to say is, or I'll ask you, Ahmed, where did you hear that from? Were you down the steps? No, I was in your class. So who'd you hear it from? Who did you get that story from? Who told you that? He'll say, Brother Mu'tasim gave it to me. So the first question is, who is this guy Mu'tasim? Who is he? Is he a Muslim? Is he pious? Is he a sinful person? Is he a wicked person? Honestly, it's very important. Does he have integrity? Is he known to be a liar? Is he known to be a cheap, stingy person? He's a thief? Because all of these characteristics will make us accept or reject what he tells us. No, this guy, Mu'tasim, he's known. He's always making jokes. He's always lying. He's known. We can't take what he says. He's not a Muslim. Everybody clear on this? For example. Secondly is, he has to have retentive memory. Mu'tasim is known to have a poor memory. He falls asleep in class. He's late. His grades are bad. Even though he's pious, he's religious, he's a good Muslim, but his memory is what? It's not good. Everybody clear on this? Thirdly, there can't be any hidden defect or something that's wrong and funny. You say that the woman, she passed out in the classroom on the first floor. Sister Khadija says, oh, there are no classrooms on the first floor. There are no classrooms on the first floor. What do you mean? So, did he lie? Did he make a mistake? We say that there's a glitch somewhere, One way or another, is something wrong with his report. Everybody clear on this? Like a laptop. The laptop, it seems to be new. It seems to be good. It seems to be working to the naked eye. But someone who knows about laptops, who knows about computers, he cuts it on, he presses the power button. You see that noise right there? He says this model computer doesn't have, something's wrong with it. An expert. Someone who's learned, who's studied and deals with computers every day of his or her life. And the similarity is made with the sciences of hadith. And that is what? In brief. If you want more on this, you can go to many of the videos that we have done on this topic. Moving on. Hadith science grading system. There's a long, tiring process declaring the hadith to be sound based off of the previously mentioned four conditions. Long and tiring process. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in 5 minutes. But it happens after years of sacrifice,